This is not a story about rumors. This is not a story about online speculation. And this is not a story designed to shock for attention. This is a story about power, how it protects itself, how it crosses borders, and how it survives exposure. Jeffrey Epstein was not a mystery figure operating in darkness. He was a convicted criminal who moved comfortably in elite spaces, traveled freely across countries, and maintained relationships with individuals who shaped finance, politics, and global influence. That did not happen by accident. It happened because systems exist that reward silence and punish disruption. For years, survivors spoke publicly. Law enforcement documented patterns. Journalists raised alarms. And yet, meaningful accountability did not arrive until decades later. That delay was not caused by a lack of information. It was caused by a lack of willingness. In recent years, thousands of pages of court-released documents tied to civil litigation entered the public domain. These records did not issue verdicts, and they did not declare guilt. What they did was place sworn testimony, timelines, and locations on the record statements given under oath, preserved by the courts, and now accessible to the public. Being named in such documents does not mean wrongdoing. That distinction matters. But silence, when faced with consistent sworn testimony, raises serious questions, especially when the same names appear repeatedly across locations connected to documented abuse environments. Epstein's operation was not confined to one city or one country. Survivors described international movement. Financial activity crossed jurisdictions. Properties were maintained in multiple regions, each designed for privacy and insulation from scrutiny. This was not random. It was structured. One of the most troubling aspects described by witnesses was the environment itself, places where privacy did not exist for some, but absolute secrecy existed for others. Several testimonies referenced surveillance, record-keeping, and post-event questioning. Investigators and journalists have since raised a question that remains unresolved but increasingly credible: whether information itself was the true source of Epstein's protection. Influence does not always rely on force. Sometimes it relies on leverage, and leverage relies on knowledge. Epstein's 2008 plea arrangement in Florida, which shielded unnamed individuals from prosecution, was later ruled a violation of victims' rights. By the time that ruling came, Epstein was dead. The criminal case ended. The system moved on. The victims were left with answers that came far too late. Since then, civil accountability has exposed more than criminal proceedings ever did. Financial institutions have paid penalties for maintaining relationships despite internal warnings. Epstein's estate has paid substantial settlements to survivors. Ghislaine Maxwell, his longtime associate, is now serving a federal sentence for trafficking-related offenses. Yet even now, the broader network, the enablers, facilitators, and protectors, remains largely unexamined. The Epstein network was international. That fact is no longer disputed. Online discussions have attempted to attach this network to many countries, including Pakistan. It is critical to be clear and responsible here. There is no court ruling, no verified indictment, and no proven evidence establishing involvement by any Pakistani state institution or named public figure in Epstein's crimes. However, Pakistan, like many nations, exists within the same global ecosystem where political leaders, financial elites, donors, and power brokers intersect at conferences, forums, and international platforms. Intersection is not guilt, but intersection without transparency creates vulnerability. This story is not about nationality. It is about structure. And that structure explains something else that often goes unspoken. Power-based systems do not fear chaos. They fear accountability. Leaders who challenge offshore secrecy, elite immunity, and external influence do not threaten these systems with force. They threaten them with exposure. That is why reformist figures across the world face similar patterns: delegitimization, isolation, and narrative control. This is where the name ImranKhan enters the discussion, not as a personal endorsement and not as a political slogan, but as an analytical example. ImranKhan repeatedly spoke about illicit wealth, offshore accounts, elite privilege, and the imbalance between global power and domestic sovereignty. Whether one agrees with his politics or not is irrelevant. What matters is that such positions disrupt systems built on silence. Networks that survive on discretion do not respond well to transparency. They do not confront it directly. They dilute it, discredit it, and eventually attempt to erase it from relevance. This pattern is not unique to Pakistan. It appears wherever entrenched power feels threatened by scrutiny. And that brings us back to Epstein, because Epstein was not powerful on his own. He was powerful because he existed at the intersection of money, secrecy, and influence, in a world where accountability is optional for the few and absolute for the many. Before continuing, it is important to state clearly and responsibly. This program is based on publicly available court documents, sworn testimony, and established journalistic investigations. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise. This analysis does not allege criminal conduct beyond what is supported by public legal proceedings. But accountability does not end where indictments stop. Justice is not only about convictions. It is about acknowledgement. It is about transparency. And it is about refusing to look away when systems fail. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is imprisoned. But the conditions that allowed this operation to exist, unchecked wealth, institutional silence, and selective enforcement, remain intact. The most dangerous aspect of the Epstein story is not what has already been revealed. It is what still has not been fully examined. Because when power protects itself long enough, silence becomes policy. And history shows us one thing very clearly: systems that fear exposure will always try to convince the public to stop asking questions. In July of 2018, as Pakistan went through a historic general election, a series of private emails were written that would not become public until years later. These emails, now part of the broader collection often referred to as the Epstein Files, released through U.S. congressional disclosures, show Jeffrey Epstein commenting not on finance, not on social events, but on global politics. And his words were unusually hostile. In one exchange, Epstein described ImranKhan as, quote, a much greater threat to peace than Erdogan, Khomeini, Xi, or Putin. It is a striking statement, not because of who said it, but because of who he compared Khan to, leaders of major nuclear, regional, and global powers. The emails were written around the time Imran Khan's political movement had just won national elections in Pakistan. Epstein cited Pakistan's nuclear capability, Khan's populist appeal, and what he described as Khan's personal beliefs as reasons for his concern. In the same correspondence, Epstein used dismissive and hostile language, calling Khan really bad news, and using other derogatory terms that reflect opinion, not evidence. It is critical to be absolutely clear here. These emails do not link Imran Khan to any criminal activity. They do not place him on Epstein's private aircraft. They do not list him as a client, associate, or participant in Epstein's crimes. What they reveal instead is something more revealing about Epstein himself. A convicted criminal, operating behind the scenes, expressing intense fear or hostility toward a leader who openly challenged elite privilege, offshore wealth, and foreign influence. This is not proof of conspiracy, but it is insight. It shows how figures embedded in opaque power networks viewed leaders who spoke openly about sovereignty, accountability, and systemic imbalance. A separate email from years earlier, also included in the release documents, mentions a United Nations official referring to Imran Khan as a prominent figure in London social circles, in the context of public health and polio eradication efforts. Again, social visibility, not wrongdoing. Taken together, these documents do not implicate Imran Khan. They expose something else entirely. They show a man like Epstein, deeply connected to elite systems, reacting with hostility to the rise of a political figure who did not fit comfortably within those systems. And sometimes, the most revealing documents are not the ones that accuse, but the ones that show who feels threatened. Epstein called Imran Khan a greater threat to peace than several prominent global leaders in his private 2018 emails. His words included hostile personal descriptors, but these remain private opinions, not evidence of wrongdoing or conspiracy. This is not a scandal story. This is not speculation. This is about how power works when no one is watching. For years, warnings were ignored, records were sealed, and accountability was delayed, not because the truth was hidden, but because it was inconvenient. Across borders, across institutions, a system protected itself. And long after one name disappeared from the headlines, the system remained. Tonight, we're not asking who was charged. We're asking something far more dangerous. Who was protected and why? This investigative analysis examines publicly available court records, civil litigation documents, and journalistic findings related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. The video explores how power, influence, and silence intersect globally, why accountability often fails, and why transparency threatens entrenched systems. The discussion includes international context and a broader look at how reformist leaders challenge elite immunity. This program is based on publicly available court records, journalistic investigations, and sworn testimony. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise. This analysis does not allege criminal conduct beyond what is established in public legal proceedings. But accountability does not end where indictments stop. Stories like this don't surface on their own. They come to light only when people choose not to look away. If you believe independent investigations matter, if you believe questions should still be asked, and if you believe transparency is worth defending, subscribe to this channel. Like this video, share it responsibly, and help us bring more documented, fact-based stories to light. Because accountability doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins with awareness. I'm Isay, and this is my channel. Not everyone gets heard. Not every truth gets protected. And not every question is welcomed. But silence has a cost. And ignoring facts has consequences. If you believe independent investigations still matter, if you believe truth should survive pressure, and if you believe awareness is the first act of courage, subscribe. Like this video. Share it carefully, responsibly. Help us keep documented, fact-based stories from disappearing. Because accountability doesn't begin in headlines, or courtrooms, or history books. It begins the moment you choose not to look away.